Welcome to another edition of Weather and Climate Chat with Monsoon Mike Regensberger and KU Meteorology Professor Dr. Michael Davis. Dr. Davis, welcome back.
It's good to be back.
Yeah, and it looks like we're back into some rather quiet weather again.
Yeah.
Or actually, when this airs on Friday, we do pre-tape these things. When this airs, it probably will be a little on the cloudy side. Seems to have been a up and down week. Of course, let's go back to last weekend. Last weekend felt like a scene from a movie. I was at a church festival, which was moved inside because it was so miserable outside. I had to run outside to get something from the car. Wind was going at about 30 miles an hour. It was raining, and it was about 48 degrees. So it seemed like a good horror movie type setting. It really
Suitable
felt like
for
fall.
Halloween right around the
Yeah,
corner.
exactly. Right. It was, and I actually used my heater for the first time last weekend. So, was that from? That wasn't from Joaquin. That was just from that storm that was parked off the coast. Correct. Yes.
Mhm. And we had the colder air that was pretty much being brought in as a result because the winds were out of the northeasterly direction. So we were getting cooler air, and that's why temperatures were down. You had a lot of moisture in the air because it's coming from the ocean.
Right.
So a lot of rain and cold air to work with.
Right. Now, of course, the big topic last week was Joaquin. Joaquin headed harmlessly out to sea. Didn't really bother us, but it did cause a lot of. Well, I don't want to say that Joaquin directly caused a lot of the trouble at the shore. The shore had a lot of rain from that storm, but there was a lot of beach erosion, and I think even an abandoned house got washed away. I saw. Now, was that directly from Joaquin, or was that a combination of both?
Probably a combination of both.
Okay.
They say if you're getting closer to the coast, and sure, you're going to get more
Right.
impacts from the storm. Where we were in the Kutztown area, we didn't really get any major direct impacts.
Right.
Probably associated impacts from like wind,
Right.
maybe a little bit of moisture coming in off the Atlantic, but nothing like what South Carolina got.
Yeah, let's talk a little bit about South Carolina. That they had some of the most historic flooding that they've ever seen. I've seen some reports of 20, 25 inches of rain. What happened down there?
Well, what happened there was they had Joaquin that was pretty much moving slowly at that point across the Carolinas. And there was a low pressure system that was pretty much sitting over Tennessee, Kentucky. And then that kind of got cut off from the actual flow of the jet stream. And the way how circulation works in the northern hemisphere is due to the Coriolis effect, you have counterclockwise rotation.
Right.
So that rotation brought in all the moisture from Joaquin.
Wow.
And you just had this moisture plume that was coming on shore around the North Carolina-South Carolina border and pretty much fluctuating north and south for days.
Right.
And you had those heavy deluges that just plagued the area, and people's houses were completely submerged in some areas by the water.
Yeah. I don't think they've seen flooding quite like that in that particular area for quite a number of years.
It was their 1,000-year flood.
1,000-year flood.
Heard. And it's interesting to note that this is the 6,000th year flood that the U.S. has seen since 2012.
So it's becoming one of those things with climate change or whatever that maybe we shouldn't use these terms like 1,000-year flood because we're having 1,000-year floods almost every other year.
They seem to be becoming more frequent.
Yes.
So whether that's linked to climate change,
Right.
I don't think you can make a direct connection to a specific singular event, but
Right.
the frequency that we're seeing certainly seems to be giving some credence to that notion that, hey, maybe we're doing something to the climate.
Wow. So they had another 1,000-year flood, and hopefully, I saw that plume of moisture. I saw the satellite and radar imagery, and you could see Joaquin off the coast, and you could just see like this little finger of precipitation that just kept like poking into South Carolina and just parking there. That was just amazing.
Yeah, because once that low got cut off from the actual
Right.
jet stream, it's very difficult to start moving that system.
So that's a preview, folks, of what could have happened in this area had that storm got caught up in that and come up the coast. But we really lucked out with that one.
Yes, we certainly did.
Yeah. And now this past week, it's been kind of an up and down week. It warmed up a little bit, got a little cooler. Weak cool front Wednesday night into Thursday. Warm front Friday, going to warm up again. Another cold front coming Friday. Weekend looks pretty crisp, would you say?
Yeah, back to looks like fall weather.
Fall.
And then another cold front looks like coming through about Tuesday next week.
Right.
And then high pressure builds back in.
And I think I was looking at the 10, 14, 20-day temperature trend, and Still, I don't see anything, ridiculously one way or the other, but still we tend to keep, maybe 2, 3, 4 degrees above normal throughout the duration.
Yeah, well, we're about 5-8 degrees above normal for
Right.
today. 'Cause
Right,
we're gonna be
exactly.
in the low to mid 70s.
Right, exactly. So we tend to keep that, we're tending to keep that pattern throughout the early part of fall, at least it seems, and it seems to continue throughout October.
Yeah. So it looks like October is going to be a little bit warmer than average.
But probably not as warm as September when we had.
No, not to that magnitude.
Now, September averaged, a good 6 or so degrees above normal, I think?
I don't know if
Averaged.
I recall a specific number, but we were definitely well above average for
Right.
September because we had 90-degree days
Yeah.
in September.
Mid-90 days. I remember that one day Reading recorded 95.
Mm-hmm.
So, and September can get pretty hot, but that was really hot.
Yes,
So,
it's definitely not something you see in September in Kutztown.
right. So the coming week looks fairly benign. We warm up a little bit again Monday, and then another cold front on Tuesday, and then we march along. So we'll see how the rest of October goes, weather-wise. Our topic this week, we always like to go from talking actually about the hard weather going on to something a little more light. Well, not always light. I mean, we've discussed climate change and stuff like that. Last week was a little light. We talked about fall leaves and fall colors. Mm-hmm. What do you say we just talk about something rather light today, since you and I are both a little bit pressed for time? We've got a lot to do. Careers in meteorology. If somebody wants to get into what you do on a full-time basis, how do you do that?
I often get students asking me that.
Yeah.
I want to get into meteorology. How do I go about doing that?
Yeah.
And one of the very first questions I ask them is, how is your science and math background? And if they give me a response like, my math's not so good, like, you have to work on that. But
Right.
math can be done.
Yeah.
And meteorology typically need to get through 3 levels of calculus and to differential equations. And for the science side, you need to get your chemistry in, your physics, and learn more about how the atmosphere works in terms of thermodynamics and dynamic meteorology, how air rises, sinks, moves about. And usually that is pretty sufficient, I would say, for a meteorological background.
Okay.
Now, we here at Kutztown, we don't offer a pure meteorology degree,
Right.
but we have in the geography department a track with environmental studies, which goes over the whole broad suite of classes that I offer,
Right.
which are meteorology, climatology, weather analysis, which is more of an advanced meteorology course,
Okay.
and I'm inheriting the global warming and climate change class, which will be offered in the fall of
Okay.
this year.
Couldn't think
Or
of a better
next year,
person to do that class than you.
Yeah, it's going to be mostly based on textbook reading
Okay.
and actually book reading as well.
Okay.
I have some books like Michael Mann's book, Hockey Stick Wars and Climate Change. And I also have this book from Catherine Hayhoe, who's a professor, I believe, at Texas Tech.
Okay.
Could be Texas A&M, but I'm pretty sure it's Texas Tech. I always forget what schools down
Yeah,
there in
I know.
Texas have who. But,
Too many schools in Texas. Yeah.
But her and her husband is a pastor of a local church, and she talks about how you can blend climate change in with a religious community, because more often than not, the religious side seems to think more that God has this creation, we are incapable of
Right.
influencing it, but she actually is able to go into these churches and talk to
Good.
them about climate change and how we as servants of God can
Good.
help him maintain his creation. So I think that's an interesting way
Sounds a
to
little
go
like
about
what the
it.
Pope is doing. Not
Pretty
to throw,
much,
not to
yeah.
throw his name out there again, but kind of what he's trying to aim for.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
So I try to give those sides to have more the pro-anthropogenic or human-based side of climate change. And then I also have a book from Fred Singer, who's a noted climate skeptic who has a whole book talking about how climate change can't really be true, or maybe it's more natural-based, or
Right.
how we're simply overstating the problem.
Right.
And then there's another book that I'm using. It's called Cool It by Bjorn Lomborg, who's more of a economist and looking at the economics around climate change and how we're giving so much money to climate change and how much we're actually getting out of it.
Wow.
and it's not as much as, say, what you would get from trying to give people clean water or curing disease. So more of a humanitarian, perhaps,
Right.
approach to it. But the fact of the matter is I want them to get a wide view of where people are coming from
Right.
at this problem. So
That's
how
good.
I'm planning on structuring the course, at least.
That's excellent, actually, and I think that's great that you're even throwing in, some skeptics in there as well too, so you can see that side of the argument.
Yeah, I do want them to have both sides of the debate so
Yeah.
they have an idea of what the whole situation is rather than a purely one viewpoint.
Absolutely. I read a study or something somewhere that a lot of people that argue certain causes are ill-equipped to argue against it because they've never really read up on the other side that much. They just have their one view, and that's it.
And that's what I'm hoping to provide
That's good.
students in that course. So I'm looking forward to teaching it.
So that you would say that's a good start to, going into meteorology, you could say.
Well, if
a
student,
start.
Yeah, if a student here at Kutztown wanted to get into meteorology,
Right.
I would probably say take those courses, work on your math and science skills, and see where it can take you. Now, we don't offer that meteorology degree like I stated previously, so more likely than not, you're going to have to consider graduate school and look at more
Somewhere.
advanced courses, say at Penn State, who has a great program. Rutgers has another great program. Maryland has a great program. So those are some local schools. Of course, my Ohio State has as well.
Of course. Very good. Well, that sounds great, and then it's something that that math thing is something that always got me too, because I had considered going into meteorology when I was trying to figure out what I was going to do, and then when I saw how much math was never one of my stronger subjects, so that scared me a little. So
Yeah, math does scare, I think, some students,
Yeah.
and when I have students come in to get math help on the homework problems, they often say things like, "Oh, I stink at math,"
Yeah.
or "I don't like math." And I'm like, you have to get that out of your mind. You have
Right.
to think, I can do this.
Right.
And if you come to me, I can help you come up with the tools and strategies to help get the problem solved.
Sounds
So
good.
more often than not, I find that the students maybe don't have an understanding of how to approach the problem.
Right.
And that's where they get hung up rather than having a disdain for the whole mathematical subject.
Sounds good. So if a student was interested, they're listening to this broadcast right now, and they want some more information about this, can they come talk to you? Or
Oh, certainly. They
Okay.
can come to my office. I'm in the Graduate Center, room 212.
Okay.
Or my email is midavis@kutztown.edu.
Fantastic.
Or they can even contact the geography department as well, or look at their geography department's website.
Can't beat that. All right. Well, Dr. Michael Davis, I'll let you go. You're a busy man today, and I got a lot doing today as well, too. So we'll end it here. Thanks so much, and we'll reconvene again next week as usual.
Thanks for having me, and we'll see you next week.
See you next week.